Hello and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all the news from Star Citizen from the week just past. I am your host Mac, so let's get on with it. This week we get a first look at the new commodity inventory, we check out the improvements to hover mode, plus we get some great insights to server-side OCS and Star Citizen's development as a whole. So on Inside Star Citizen this week, they first started speaking about this personal commodity inventory. Now they say this is the first step into the full personal inventory. What it'll do is allow you to pick up commodities after you've mined them and store them in your backpack. Now this isn't for storing your guns or magazines, it is purely for storing commodities found, mined or bought. So it's kind of specialised for commodities. So you could go off and mine something inside a cave, pick up the items you've mined and put them into your backpack, then head to your ship and empty your whole inventory into the ship and then sell it on. You access your inventory via the personal thought mode. This will bring up all the items that you have collected, and you can see the options you have is like drop individual item or store all. Now if you hit store all, it'll place every item in your backpack into a single box that then can be placed in your ship's cargo hold and sold on at a terminal. I really like this feature. It's going to be so much fun, kind of giving that mining and harvesting round gameplay sort of cycle. I can just imagine mining as a group in a cave and then loading everything up into, say, a caterpillar or a smaller ship, depending on how long it takes us, and then selling it on and hopefully sharing the profits as well with this new mission sharing. It kind of creates a full game loop, which is kind of placeholders for the time being, but I'm going to enjoy that in 3.7. After that, they spoke about the Vanguards. We first saw the Sentinel. Obviously, the colour schemes are temporary. They're just testing them out, as they mentioned a while ago. Inside the central pod, it holds the e-warfare suite with large terminals, which he says will have sort of diagnostic screens on. They're just placeholders for now, but it's sort of based around an aircraft carrier. You've got these cool, tall, hollow glass displays. Still has the beds and the galley. The Harbinger has got the torpedo room, which will allow players to actually watch torpedoes as they fire. Really liking the look of these Vanguards. It's nice to get them all in as a whole group of variants. So we'll see what gameplay they bring. Anyway, finally, we spoke to Dave Coulson, who took us through the IFCS Proximity Assist. Now, this is to help make landing easier, and no longer will it feel like a helicopter, which I'm still undecided of whether I like that or not. I get that it's not a helicopter and the thrust isn't coming from propellers, so I guess it would feel differently. But he says it doesn't currently feel intuitive. They wanted something more softer and more believable when flying, so when you get close to the ground at low speeds, it slows the acceleration of the thrusters down dynamically, just changing depending on what you're doing. They said that they don't want flight to be jerky and difficult. They did also say that they'll soon be adjusting the thrusters in atmosphere by reducing the efficiency of the thrusters so that your thrusters are weaker while flying around in atmosphere, which will be more realistic. Now, I've said this before, it's hard to really gauge how this is going to feel until we actually get it in our hands. Talking about it is only going to do so much. So 3.7, end of September, we will see how well it works. Anyway, that was Inside Star Citizen. Let's move on. So for Star Citizen Live this week, it was a sit down with Brian Chambers and Todd Pappy, plus Chad McGinney when he came over, and talking about development of Star Citizen as a whole, plus a nice insight into server-side object container streaming. Now the first question is, why are they going to this staggered development method? And they say they tried being feature-driven and patches got delayed. They've tried being date-driven and found that patches were too rough and too buggy. Staggered means instead of having 3 months to get a feature released and as playable and bug-free as possible, having 6 months instead gives the developers time to really get the feature into a more stable state, better quality of life. It also means that developers won't be spending months bug fixing after the patch is released, rather, they'll be getting on with the next patch instead of. And I actually, when you start seeing and hearing about this, it does make a lot more sense than what we have had. So fingers crossed it does improve the development. Obviously this is still a learning curve for CIG and they've tried different methods. There are issues with those methods, so they're trying something new. Next question is, can we be less focused on ships and more focused on professions? Now, firstly, I will just say that the people working on the ship pipeline, like your concept team, your modelling team, your tech setup guys, they're not always the same developers working on the gameplay programming, so they can't just stop one to help another. But they did say that they view the professions now as a collection of activities, and so at the moment they're building those individual activities. Then once they're done, they will be put together that will then create that profession. They have some activities prioritised which are Squadron 42 needed, which is where most of the resources are focused on, as you know. We will get the Squadron 42 similar professions first, so maybe along the lines of combat professions. But currently they have teams working on resource gathering gameplay, cargo and scanning gameplay. The current plans, they say, are really to focus on getting mining done for ships and FPS. Then it's on to salvaging, which is also classed as resource gathering. It's the same sort of vein. Then there's trading, piracy, mercenary and bounty hunting. So they're the sort of priorities at the moment. Next question, we have a lot of long-standing bugs that are not getting addressed. When will they get addressed, and why aren't they done yet? Now they said depending on the bug, for example the HUD brightness, that's not been addressed because they are currently updating the HUD as a whole. So they feel like as they're close to getting the HUD update done, it's pointless adjusting that right now. Staggered development should help reduce the amount of bugs, and especially long-term bugs, as they will have more time to fix the bugs before release. They are also prioritising certain bugs and focusing on them now, so we should start seeing them getting resolved, which is great news. So after this, Chad came in and spoke about server-side OCS's current status. Now, it is a very large effort which begun last year. He said he's just left a meeting with Chris Roberts about server-side OCS, and it was very positive as a whole. They've done a large set of changes to how object containers load. It gives them more information into what is and isn't streamable. They've created a star hash service, as they call it, which is basically a universe coordinate system similar to geohashes, if you know what they are. I personally don't. But this allows them to see what sections of the universe are streaming in and out at any given time. This was hooked up to the streaming manager, which drives streaming events to what needs streaming in and out, so it determines what is relevant. They've also implemented a prototype persistence cache. Server-side OCS needs global persistence, which completely changes the way the game runs. For testing purposes, they created this prototype. So next up is implementation of the real persistence and the cloud services to handle a larger load of data. Obviously this work is still progressing, and also all the game code needs to change, which requires all the teams to update everything, which is obviously a big job, but it's necessary. They did actually say the prototype for persistence that they have is working really well. So well, in fact, that they are thinking about phasing out the server streaming so it doesn't need full persistence initially. This means that they can add in the benefits without needing the complete state of persistence, which could mean that we get portions of it earlier than expected, which is good news. Server meshing, they say, just requires server-side OCS, so they need that before they can really deploy it, but there are things for server meshing that they can work on now, and they are doing. Someone asked about servers being at capacity. Does this mean we won't be able to get more content like planets? And they say they just don't want to commit to releasing server-side OCS, which means things could get slipped. But also, even once server-side OCS comes out, if it is earlier than expected, it doesn't guarantee that the content can then suddenly increase dramatically. It needs a testing phase to see how it goes, and then they can start adding new features. So it does sound like things like the planets are likely going to get pushed back until server-side is done and tested thoroughly. Someone asked about persistence, and will this end the quarterly wipes? Now, persistence doesn't generally mean that wipes will stop. Wipes happen because the game is very much in flux and changing, so it needs to be reset. The goal is to get the game features more stable before they stop the wipes. They do have a solid plan on how to get away from wiping all the time. They're also exploring potential ways to persist certain things sooner. Important things like ships and UEC, which are obviously important to the progression of each player. So even after a wipe, you could still retain what is important to you. And that would be really good if they could bring that in, even just as a stopgap till they get everything more fine-tuned. Someone asked about the deep dives. We used to get these really good in-depth looks into certain features, and they've just stopped. Now, they did say that it's because they've changed the way that they develop things, so they're unlikely to go back to releasing deep dives. It was making it too difficult to just sort of guess how each feature would work later on in the game, and then the developers having to struggle to meet that demand when they start building the feature out. So it's not likely we'll see that, unfortunately. Fuel gameplay feature was removed from the roadmap completely. What's going on there? Now, refueling requires 2 areas. Number 1 is resource gathering, and number 2 are vehicles. They have 2 teams which will work on each segment separately, and it will reappear on the roadmap sooner or later, but it's not required for Squadron 42, which is why it's not a top priority. They will be releasing Spectrum posts to help us better understand some of the reasons for pushing features as they happen. Also, as soon as they know something will slip or something will come in early, they will try and update us on the roadmap as soon as possible, which is good. As we said before, just giving us the information is important than surprising us with it. And someone actually asked about the status of Vulkan implementation. Now, apparently it's going good. They have had a recent summit for Vulkan and broken it into 3 stages. The first stage is the cleanup of the global state and rendering code, which they've done about 3 to 4 months work on this so far. Stage 2 is a refactor of render passes to take advantage of the APIs and future GPUs, which started about 2 weeks ago. Stage 3 is then implementing the Vulkan backend. It's not officially kicked off, but there are teams working on it now. He did say that as changes come in, they will be able to implement them into the game. They don't have to have the full Vulkan API working to get it in, so we should see some performance improvements when they get certain areas finished. Next question, once Squadron 42 is shipped, will the PU get more developers? Now, they say yes and no. A portion of the team will go on to the PU, but others will go on to pre-production for Chapter 2. Some people won't be needed for Squadron 42 towards the end, and so developers who are working on areas of Squadron 42 now, when they get done, they will come across to the PU as it starts reaching its final sort of months of development. Next question, ship combat has several issues. Is there a team working on this? Will we see any changes to 3.7? And they say yes, they have created a balanced team who will just literally fix things, tune and polish as they go. We will see a lot in 3.7 and every patch from here out. A lot of tuning and fine-tuning. Things like fixing pips and targeting, your gimbal assist for example, turret behaviours, missiles, close combat, high-speed combat shields and more. They will tune and test at a much faster rate thanks to this dedicated team making it their focus. So getting combat and ships feeling right. Obviously, this is really important for Squadron 42. It needs, the flight combat in the finished single-player game needs to be to the best it can be. So, luckily, it is a priority. Next question, will we get remote logging outside of a spaceship, being able to log in and out without having to use our ship each time? And they have spoken about this recently. Chris does want us to have other methods of logging, be it at a landing zone, a ship, a station, a tent, a sleeping bag. Global persistence and persistent hubs are very important in this area, so hopefully we're not waiting too long. Second to last question, will we ever be able to lock on to ground targets? And they say yes, but it won't be in 3.7. And then the final question is to do with 4.0. Can we expect a large leap in the experience like we did with 2.9 to 3.0? And they said, yes, if server-side OCS does make it in, then we will likely see a full Stanton system by 4.0, which is definitely a big leap. So Jared actually said, keep your eyes peeled on the 4.0 patch, as there are things yet to be added. But obviously with it being so far away, we don't know how long we're going to wait. Anyway, that was it for Star Citizen Live. Some really good information there, and definitely clarified a lot of things for me personally. Do let me know what your thoughts are on that. Are there still questions you have? Anyway, let's move on. So also this week, the Aegis Nautilus got its Q&A. The Origin 890 Jump went back on sale. CIG addressed the reasons for certain features being removed from the roadmap, like salvaging. And finally, both the Squadron 42 and Star Citizen monthly report are now available. Do expect to see the Squadron 42 report in a future video here on this channel. So that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a video. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and share the video with all your friends. If you like what I do and want to help me make it better, follow the link below to my Patreon page to learn more.